I was in the choir. Oftentimes, things like that, you don't midweek programs. You don't
Did
see
you get a solo?
a lot.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Tom. Welcome back, everyone, to an Almost Perfect podcast. We've been away, but we're back here. And since we've been back, I don't know if you realize, guys, the last time we recorded, that was our 150th episode.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah. So that means this is our 151st, if I'm doing my math correctly. I went to Galveston School, but I think it's our 151st podcast. So congratulations. Put that on your resumes, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but it does mean we could have been closer to 200, maybe even over 200 if I didn't get sick and if I was better organized. We'd probably be well over 200.
If any of us had stepped in the breach, but we didn't. We just
So I want you all at home to know that I've always told you guys, y'all don't need me here. Get up, start talking, and when you're done, I can edit later. Y'all don't need me here. If I can't make it, just go on. What did Bishop tell you? Take thou authority. Take thou podcast authority. Joseph, Tom.
John, it sounds like you're trying to make it a perfect podcast. This is
I was ordained when the idea of a podcast was not going to happen. It did not exist. In fact, I still do word things, and you type in the word blog, and it doesn't allow something like. What do you mean? It's a word.
Tom, do you remember when blogs were the newest thing, right?
I don't. I do remember blogging, though. I still have a website that I maintain.
I was going to say, I remember you have a website. Joseph, do you have a website as well?
I do.
Okay, here it is. We're going to advertise ourselves. Go ahead. What's your we never do this. Joseph, what's your website?
It's joetops.com.
Tom, what's yours?
That's a good question. It's either T as in Tom, Neal Tarver.com, or it's Tom Neal Tarver. I don't remember.
If Tom doesn't know, we won't expect you to know. It won't be on the test. Don't worry.
There's I go back and read some of the articles, and even though they're dated, they're often timely even now because of the nature of the information. So the last time I posted, though, it's been at least a year and a half. So
what do you post in yours, Joseph? What's on your site?
It's not very active. Few blog posts. Trying to.
There's that word again, Tom. Blog.
Yeah, blogging is still there. Yeah. It's not as popular as vlogging has taken over.
Yeah, that's true. Mine, I put my daily devotionals up there, sermons, and then a few occasional thoughts here and there. So yeah, it's fun. Anyway, all right. So let's talk about.
You're not going to ask me what I mean. Just ask Joseph.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Tom. Tom, you blog once a year, and you want people. Tom, what do you blog about once a year?
I can say that it centers around, at least in the past, no matter what the current title is, it centers around community in Christ. What does that look like? And like I said, that there's some articles that kind of flesh that out. That I'm I am glad I wrote them. I don't want to say I'm proud of, but there's times when you do something well and you did it well. And a few of those articles are definitely along that line. I've just been meandering. I think the title is baseball, birds, and the Bible, because those are maybe bikes in there too. So
Very good. Very good. Well, keep it up. Maybe do it twice a year now, Tom.
now there will come a day where I get back into it.
All right, good. All right. So anybody, you ever guys ever do show and tell at school?
You know, I know that they've done that. I don't ever remember doing it in school because we didn't have anything to show back then.
Here's some dirt and some sticks.
Here's a bat that we've nailed back together that we broke.
That's funny. Joseph, you shook your head. Yes, you used to do show and tell. Oh no,
it's not culturally. That was not something education is really different back home. Things are changing, but growing up, it's different. You just come and sit and listen to the teacher and answer questions. Yeah.
I never did show and tell. I always saw that on TV. I thought like, wow, the rest of the world's doing show and tell. And we never do show and tell. So we did a lot of spelling bees when I was in school. I don't know if that means anything, but here's a story out of, where was this, out of the UK? Why do all the interesting stories come out of the UK? A primary school in Derbyshire has had to be evacuated after something that a student brought for show and tell. You want to take any guesses what the student brought to show and tell?
I saw it, so I know.
Oh, you already saw it?
I haven't seen the article, so my first thought is it's a reptile.
A reptile? You think the school would be evacuated over a reptile?
Was
it Godzilla?
Might have been a World War II memento. He brought in a grenade or something.
Tom, you're amazing, Tom. You're amazing. That's exactly what. Are you sure you didn't read this?
I did not.
Are you sure this isn't a story about your childhood? That's exactly it.
My bet is, of the three of us, I'm the only one who's actually handled a live grenade.
I have not.
I'm sure it's only you.
Yeah.
Only once, and that was during basic training. And when they told us to throw it, I threw it. It's probably the farthest I've ever thrown it.
I know that's right. Again, a primary school in Derbyshire has had to be evacuated after a student brought a grenade in for a Second World War show and tell assembly. Tom, you win today. That was an amazing guess. I'm proud of you. That was great.
Thank you. Well,
I don't know that I would have guessed that.
I was thinking of two things. One is what would clear out a school, and the other is it's England, so they were directly. We were involved, and we were attacked. But you forget that Hawaii is even a part of our. Well, you don't forget. It's just that very few people have actually been to Hawaii that I know of.
Sure. And in England, they got all the leftovers hanging around all these years later. So that's exactly what it was. It's actually a grenade that child brought from home. Didn't discuss it with his parents. Big surprise. It's a family heirloom. It's been in the family for quite a while, and they brought it in, and the teacher saw it and kind of freaked out. But this teacher took the grenade from the boy, not knowing if it was active, right? Took it from him, walked it outside and put it behind a tree, called the authorities, all the bomb squad, all those people that came in, and they checked and it was fine. It wouldn't have exploded. They were going to be safe, but they did say that teacher did the right thing. They did the right thing. And the school, the student, he probably won't be participating in the next show and tell. I don't know. If we had show and tell on the podcast next week, what would you bring?
Let me give you three guesses.
Baseball.
Okay, there you
birds. And what was your other B?
I bring a baseball.
And a bicycle.
And a bicycle, yes. You got all the B's down. Yeah. We'll get you to the C's by next year.
Yeah, I'd bring an exotic bird feather, and then I'd get arrested. Surprisingly, you are not.
They caught you. Yeah.
You're not supposed to have bird feathers.
Joseph, what do you bring to show and tell?
I honestly don't know. Show and tell. Maybe something from Africa, from Nigeria specifically,
Okay.
maybe.
I would bring my lamp.
That would be great.
I would bring my lamp. Where is it? Right there.
Your lamp?
Yeah, that's my lamp. I got that a few weeks ago. Gloria got it for me.
Is that the
Yeah.
reproduction from A Christmas
A
Story?
Christmas Story, yeah. Fragile. If you know that reference. If you don't, it's okay. You can wait till Christmas. All right, here's another story. You ever read the Magna Carta? I always say Carter. It's not Carter.
Carta.
Magna Carta. Have you ever read it?
No.
Probably have read a phrase from it.
I think I've read pieces of it, maybe way back in school. But
haven't read our Constitution or
Harvard Law School bought a copy of the Magna Carta back in the 1940s for $27.50, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. In today's money, it's part of the article. It says that would be about $470 today, which, for such an important document, if you don't remember, this is the document signed by one of the kings, right? And it brought everyone under the rule of law, even royalty, even the king, right? It would be subjected to law. And so future democracies would be based on it, so on and so forth. Well, Harvard, back in the 1940s, the law school, they purchased this copy for $27.50. Come to find out, it is one of the originals that were written way back in, was that, the
13th century?
13th, 12, 12, I don't remember the exact year, but yeah, one of those things. So yeah,
if you're watching, would you Google and then
this is not a history podcast. Don't ask me for dates. And I will confess to you, I have read the Bible. I'm sure you guys have, back and forth many times. And I still have to, I'm like, let's see, is it Isaac, Joseph? It's kind of like when you say the alphabet, it's like A, B, M, N, L, O. I always get confused. I always have to make sure. And I'm like that with dates. I'm like that with names and everything else. So don't ask me about history, dates, and stuff like that. But anyway, so I was scared church people would hear this story and be like, that's why we can't throw anything away. You don't know what we may have in our 3 storage closets. And no. If you're a church listening, throw it away. You're not dealing with the original anything. Get rid of it. You are not Harvard Law School. So excuse me. All right, let's get serious, Tom. It's about time for us to get serious. After 150 episodes, Joseph, it is time for us to be serious. See, I don't even know how to do it. It's tough. So what I asked the guys to talk about, to prepare for over the last couple of weeks, or was it about 9:30? I think it was.
After I wrote you.
That's what I was actually texting the moment I got your message.
Okay.
So we were on the same wavelength. We were there. So Joseph, I don't know what you were doing.
Maybe making breakfast for the kiddos.
Okay. Yeah. I could do breakfast. Yeah. Breakfast is good. So, all right. Anyway, so I asked the guys to consider talking about what we commonly call a call story. And if you aren't familiar with that terminology, it comes when preachers talk about how they got called into pastoral ministry. But it's also something we identify in the Bible, right? We think of some of the prophets who there's
specifically Moses.
Sure, Moses has a call story, right? How God called him, and several of the prophets. There's at least a sentence or two where where God called them to this task, and so it's their call story. And so I thought it'd be good every once in a while. I think a church should hear their preachers or pastors' call story, and not only to hear from these guys about what that looked like for them, but also kind of think about, what does it mean to be called by God, period. It's not just, pastors aren't the only people who are called. And so all of us as Christians, we have the sense of calling, and how to discover what that is, and discern, and so I thought that'd be helpful, and to do that, kind of start from our own call stories. So um who wants to go first?
I can, since I'm going, I'll volunteer Joseph. No, no,
I'll volunteer to let him go first. Yes.
um, mine's kind of an interesting thing, and I wrestled with it throughout pastoral ministry, because my call was, it was almost it wasn't, if you were standing next to me, you would have heard no voice. But I had that inner voice. It's very clear, that said, "Follow me." That's it. Follow me. And I remember it was ninth grade, walking across the football field, and my response was, "Follow you. I don't even know you." And it was an honest response, and it was very clear to me. I mean, in that moment, to this day, I knew it was God speaking into my life. And it was about was less than 2 years later. I was a junior in high school. I just was this week reflecting on that with my brother, who was a part of this uh, revival at our church. But I mean, it was a revival that was God led, not we had a speaker come in and everybody changed. Anyway, I was with Wayne and two friends who were a part of that, and we were talking about the experience. But when I was a junior in high school, it was in the winter, and we had a one night, basically a 24-hour retreat at what is now Camp Zephyr. And I just remember it was on what we called Lake Mathis. And we came from Victoria, and during that time, there was a group from Oral Roberts University who came down, and they led the retreat. And the thing that impressed me was they prayed a lot. They would say, "You have free time." And then we knew, I don't know if they said, "We're going to go pray." But that impressed me. It kind of opened up my heart a little bit. And during that entire retreat, I never made a commitment to Christ. But the moment we got back home, and I always say, between the car door and the front door, Jesus Christ met me. And all of a sudden, follow me. I could no longer say, "Follow you. I don't know you." It's like, "I know you." And I interpreted that, and I still do to this day, interpreted it as a call to pastoral ministry. I just had hard time trying to. I had a hard time trying to, as I say, fit the role. I always felt unqualified. Sure. And then I look at scripture, and that's pretty much the way many leaders felt. They're surprised, kind of shocked that God would even know who they were and would want them in a position of leadership. Paul admits that. Moses definitely felt that way. And through a number of circumstances, I would step away from pastoral ministry, but God would always bring me back until I finally got it, and I continued to serve within the church as a pastor. So that's my story, and
So
I get to it.
So you had that sense of hearing the voice. People ask that quite often. I'm sure, Joseph, maybe you've had those questions too. Like, is it an audible voice? Do you hear it? Do other people hear it? You had an experience where you heard what nobody else heard, right?
Nobody else was there to hear.
Right.
If they had been, they wouldn't have heard it.
And then those years later, as you're getting out of the car door, And how did you make the connection between, okay, I know who you are now, and you're calling me to pastoral ministry? How did that, like, how did that be what you sensed the calling was to be?
One of the things, as United Methodists, we've heard the story of John Wesley. I've felt my heart strangely warmed, and I've never heard a better description of what happened to me that night between the car door and the front door. But you know, I had to, I guess, certain. Actually, I don't think I had any special skills as far as I wasn't. In the choir, I was one of the ones who never got I was always in the chorus, never one of the. In fact, I may have been the only one that never got a solo or a duo or a trio.
I'm
So
sorry, Tom.
so I wasn't gifted musically. I, always hated in high school when we had to do uh, a talk in front of people on whatever the teacher had assigned us. So I wasn't a bold person who loved to stand up in front of, and I know I'm an extrovert, and I enjoy being with people. It energizes me, but I that's something I've learned about myself definitely after high school, and maybe even after college. So I'm going, honestly, it was something I knew, and it's been reaffirmed through life experiences.
Hmm.
Um, but I can't tell you why I knew. Just like I can't tell you why I heard God's voice and knew it was God's voice and gave God an honest response. Know you, follow you. I don't know you, and I was like, I'll check back in about 18 months.
Yeah, just remember this. And I actually think that's helpful because sometimes, again, people have these questions like, how do I know for sure? And I, I have to tell them sometimes you just don't know, and that's the point, right? Like there's no, it's not written in the clouds, and there's no writing on the wall, and there's not always this. Yeah, this is it. This plan. It's this sort of almost kind of piecing together. Is that fair to say,
Yeah,
Joseph?
yeah, and like I said, coming back to what I said earlier is, I thought I got it wrong, and I
Mhm.
stepped away from pastoral ministry of two or
Mhm.
three times, and specific things
That's interesting. Yeah.
happened that that brought me back, saying, yes, I've gifted you for this purpose.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like just to connect, Tom, there are times when I've tried to, make a way out of ministry, right? By doing other things that are good, even godly, right? But I always get that rebuke, like I've called you to ministry, and not this. This will I know the conclusion is this will ultimately take me away from, ministry, and it's a calling. I think we constantly still we keep receiving our calling. It's
Right.
not something that is done once. I think as humans, we forget, and sometimes circumstances, people, places, opportunity. There have been times when it's just that one opportunity. Hey, come preach for us, and stepping into that role again, and you get those affirmation and all those, and the spirit is, this is what I've called you to do. That reminder. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot, not only from preachers, but other people who've, sensed a calling, whatever that was for them. Um, that calling, if you try, that calling will become a nagging.
Yeah.
Like if you try to distance yourself from it, you
That's
say,
true.
well, I'm whatever, I'm going to do whatever.
Mm,
It's not going to go away. Like
yeah.
there will be a nagging. There will always be something that's just kind of at you, and it's
Mhm.
that calling, and it's
Yeah.
there, and
Mm,
run if you want, but it's not going anywhere, and it's always going to be gnawing at your soul, right?
Be Jonah if you want.
Be Jonah if you want. Yeah.
And I was Jonah. I was Moses. I mean, and in the sense of wanting to run from what God was trying to do with my life. And one of the things, and I would say I wish I really saw this and understood it. Um, and I'm not going to say I fully understand it even now, but when you look um, at the scriptures, as especially the Hebrew scriptures, where you track people who are called or tasked. Moses, he was he was a fugitive. I was going to say refugee, but no, it was more stronger than that. He was a fugitive from the law. He murdered someone in Egypt. Um, David's called, God calls him a friend, or man after my own heart is the word he uses. And David, David, we think of his great faith standing against the giant. And but if you continue to read, there's adultery, there's
Yeah.
conspiracy to murder. I mean, all of these things, and none of it disqualified that person, those people, from what God wanted to do, because ultimately it's not how gifted or equipped or any of those things in my life. In fact, the less gifted, the less equipped, the more I have to depend on God and God's grace. And
There it is.
and I wish I had understood that, because I mostly looked at my shortcomings, my failures, and God was looking at his purposes, his plans. And if I'd have kept my eye on him, I would have struggled less, especially in the area of identity. I was going, I, I'm not the right person. I'm not.
Yeah, there's that struggle, right? And that's a good struggle to have. I think it means that maybe you're kind of paying attention. So,
Yeah,
all right, Joseph, how's your call story sound? Where did it
Um,
start for you?
I think my call story in many ways has a lot of connection with my life story in general. Church was one of those things we go to for many other reasons apart from, following Christ. And it's been that way. I was troubled teen, lost on many angles, educationally terrible, just everything around me just seemed like it's falling apart. I was quiet, but very chaotic on the inside. I always tell people at 14, I knew so well that the path I was taking will lead nowhere. And I was just like, whatever. Our heroes back then are all these dropouts that made it in life, like because mentally at that age, that's where I see myself going
Sure.
to. Had this spiritual encounter, right? It's just a friend, a really good friend came and he talked about how he almost died. Funny thing, he'd never give full details. And he said, he's choosing to walk with Jesus more consciously. And I remember that night, I just felt so convicted. I said, if this is what you want to do, let's do it together. Um, I remember going back home, falling on my knees and praying. I've been to places where, you talk about spiritual encounters, but that was it for me. I just knew there was a change in my life, literal change. Back then we live off sports. Morning we're playing soccer, evening basketball, Sunday to Sunday and all that. And that switched. Sunday to Sunday, I was in church. I loved the church. And that's right now, getting paid being in the church. Come on, that's
What are we doing here, right?
that's a gift. I
Yeah.
loved the church. We were there first to be in church, last to leave. Um, had opportunities early to be given leadership. And we're talking of fairly big church, 1,000 members or more. Bible studies, devoted, and started giving me opportunities to lead, sometimes to speak. I was in the choir. Oftentimes, things like that. You don't midweek programs. You don't
Did
see
you get a solo?
a lot.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Tom. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, I did. And I'll go there and people are not there and I'll lead, and
Mm.
things like just stepping into that. And you do that over time. People start saying, maybe you have a calling, but it's something I was avoiding. But still, just love, what God has done for me, transformed my life. Like just the new vision, empowerment to leave. And, I could feel this transformation and this change. I was becoming likable, and I was even getting girls' attention. I'm like, hey,
Watch
you
out.
know,
It's always the girl.
I wasn't thinking about that at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Just came.
Yeah.
just came,
Those latent blessings that
I
come, right?
know, I know. The scripture says, seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things will be added. So,
Well, you got solos and you got girls. And none of that. Of course, I think I'm okay with the one
that you ended up with. Yeah.
Young
So that
Tom
was,
would have been mad at you.
I know, right? It was, it
was
was one of those things. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's growing up really, poor. Ministry wasn't attractive because you just know, it's something back home. It's not something you do to really make good living. So that was something I was trying to
Mm.
avoid. But I remember even before I said yes, I remember as a teenager, I'll go to the bathroom, I'll get this cassette recorder, and I'll lock the door and be recording myself preaching. Um, and anytime I thought about the future, I always saw myself behind the pulpit. That was just embedded in I just couldn't see anything. And while I was planning other futures for myself, that was the future I was always seeing. So with confirmation from people, this struggle within me, I remember going to one of our, teen events back then, and someone was talking about calling and all. Just felt so convicted. And I remember saying, okay, God, I'll do it.
Mm.
It's just that yes. I I didn't know. Unlike here, there's the path you can, no direction, what seminary, where I will go. And it was just, yes, Lord, however you will lead, And it was that conviction that I felt, and in line with affirmation from people like, hey, you're doing this. People are calling you, hey, pastor, I'm like,
Yeah.
no, and all that. But having that confirmation in my spirit, I just knew this direction was one I was going to say yes to. And a big part of the hesitation in saying yes is, like Tom said, never feeling like I was good enough to be used by God. Uh,
Mm.
Still never feeling enough. Like, I'm good enough. And I've come to learn one thing, maybe anyone who is listening, I've come to realize even in ministry, there's a calling within a calling within a calling, right? That we're doing
Mm.
ministry, but sometimes it could be geared towards social justice, it could be
Sure.
humanitarian, it could be God can still be calling us to other kinds of focus, even in our ministry calling that we constantly need to be saying yes to at the same time. But yeah, that's a summary of my call story.
That's an important thing, though. Like the actual, yes, Lord, right? I
Mm,
hear you, right? Okay. Instead of, the maybe you don't say no, but you act like you saying no. But that
yeah.
actual, okay, yes, even when you don't know the plan, even when you don't know what's
Mhm.
next, whatever, that's important. So as the church, we talk about, ministry, and, our church has a ministry, but I also think it's important to realize that, as a collective body of a lot of individual people, like God might be calling you to prioritize something that God hasn't asked me to
Mm.
prioritize. But
Yeah.
through your acceptance of that calling, you help expand, what I'm able to do, right? And then somebody else has another focus, and so we help with them. The priority might be for that person because that's their quote
Mm.
unquote calling, but they're helping the church, I think, further their understanding of what
Mm.
ministry can be,
Yeah.
furthering their participation in what they, otherwise I'm not doing anything. That's not my job. But if you, who are part of my faith community, I've seen this calling in you, well, now I'm being a part of it with you, and
Yeah.
and we're both doing what
Mm.
God wants us to do together. And I think that's an important part of how all of our callings come together that we have to respond to. So it's just say yes, y'all. Just make it easy on yourself. Just start with yes.
Mm.
Okay. Just do it.
Yeah,
All right.
and what you're saying, I want
Mm.
to kind of make it clear is you're being called to ministry, but you're not being called to your ministry. You're being called to
Mm.
the
That's
ministry
exactly
of
right.
Christ.
That's right.
And Paul gives a very clear illustration of what it is to be a part of the body, and that that we each have kind of a unique gifting, a unique aspect that we're especially gifted in. Now, and sometimes we have to, let's say, minister or serve outside our comfort zone. So it's not
Sure.
always just simply I'm gifted and this is the only thing I can do
Mhm.
or want to do or have a passion to do. It all really comes down to recognize, number one, it is the ministry of Christ, and the biggest thing I can give to the Lord Jesus Christ is simply my obedience, my willingness to serve.
That's an important word to connect to
Yeah.
calling, right? It goes with the yes, like being obedient to what you're being called to do. Just
Yeah.
do it. All right. Let's see. Here's what I'll squeeze in. Joseph had 1,000 people at his church. I think we had a little bit less than that. I think we were at the church I was serving. We were at 30 people, I think, maybe. So just a few less. A small church. My mother-in-law was the pastor, and I was just, I had come to faith a few years before that, and I was just helping out mom, and I was eventually I was helping with the youth group. I was doing stuff with young adults. Somehow I even got on finance and even got on administrative council, just kind of right hand man. And I would help lead worship. I would do sound. I would clean the floor. Just whatever needed to be done, right? And I never thought anything about it. I was going to school. In my mind, I was going to do initially computer programming. Like, let me go make my money, y'all, right? And this church stuff is just stuff that I do because it's important to me. And I would lead Sunday school and all that kind of stuff because I just thought that's like what you do for your church, right? And people would tell me that, oh, we appreciate when you preach, you help us understand all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, these are your church people. They're supposed to tell you that,
Mhm.
right? And it wasn't until I always blame it on the Nomads. If you know the Nomads, they're a group of retired United Methodist couples usually, and they travel in their RVs and they go from church to church around the country and different places, and they do small repair work. And so they would come to our church. The second year they came, they brought a superintendent came with them, and they were from Iowa. And our congregation was a Spanish congregation, and so mom had said, hey, these people, they're coming from Iowa, they don't know Spanish, if he didn't.
Mhm.
So can you preach while they're here so they can feel more comfortable? Yeah. So I preached a sermon, and afterwards the superintendent said, we want you to come be a pastor, a preacher with us. Will you come back to us with Iowa. And I remember asking him, who lives in Iowa? I'm not going to Iowa. But that was the first time I thought that, well, these people don't know me. They're not just trying to be nice,
Yeah.
right? They heard something. And that was the first time I thought, well, maybe. And then I
Mm.
got to thinking, you joke about kind of church people all the time, but sometimes it ain't no joke. And so I remember thinking, no, I hear the way these people can talk about their pastor, and and they ain't gonna say that stuff about me. I'm not gonna, no, right? And then it was like a point where, all right, I mean, I could see this, right? And then I got to the point where it's like, Lord, please, like I'll do this if you want me to do this. And I kind of had that. For me, it wasn't out of the blue. It was this progression of, yeah, Lord, like I think I see myself being in this kind of role for the church. And so my family joined me, and we prayed, and we fasted, did all that stuff for months. And it was one Sunday night. We were at that little church, and just the usual Sunday night gathering. And I remember when we were done, I went home and I told my wife, I'm called to preach, and that was it. And I always joke because her first response was, "Oh, right," and then she's like, "Oh, but I wanted my own house." Because not United Methodist, we all don't have houses. Anyway, so and then from there, just found the way to live into that uh, calling within our form of piety and how we do all that, and here we are 20 something years later. So we made it, we did it. So it wasn't it wasn't a shocker. It was a sort of an affirmation of kind of what I thought I could do for the church. I found myself before that, caring about the spiritual lives of the people, these 30, 40 people who are here, and praying for them all the time, and all that kind of stuff that you do as a pastor. And it just yeah, Lord, yeah, I think I see this. And so it wasn't something that I ran from. It was something that I affirmed. And one of the ways I also, again, how do you discern your calling? The biggest struggle I always talk about, I've always had a stage as a kid. I did the school plays, and since I could memorize the lines, I was like one of the head, you know, parts. I never sang. They didn't let me sing, so I'm with you, Tom, on that, right? But I was always doing plays and talent shows, and so my biggest fear was that, Lord, am I just looking for another stage? I was on drumline in high school, right? All that kind of stuff, right? Everybody's always, look at me, right? And so, Lord, I don't want this to be another stage that I'm seeking. And so, and the affirmation was, no, you have what the church needs to be a fruitful and a faithful shepherd. And so that's how it came to be. So I said yes. I was ready to go, and here we are. Easy cheesy. Enough said.
Good.
Final word, Tom, about hearing, listening, discerning what a call is.
I would say my call is the same as every follower of Jesus Christ. And that's simply, and you see it again and again in the Gospels, follow me.
Amen to that. Joseph, got a final word?
Um, in whatever calling, wherever God has called you, it's to be true to that calling. We don't call ourselves, and if God has called us, sometimes we don't affirm it ourselves. So others join with us in affirming it. If sometimes people feel, this is probably not the direction you're called to preaching or pastoring. It might be in some other areas in the church. it's okay when people affirm that, I was just thinking of, because sometimes like, oh, this is what God has called me to, and the whole church is not saying amen to that. I think it's something we can take a step back and look into some more.
Yeah, that would be what the FBI calls a clue. So, and what I also try to emphasize is that this calling it quite often extends beyond the church, and that's the point
Yes.
too. That it's not just preaching, it's not just
Yeah.
teaching Sunday school. It's there's a calling that
Yep.
in a way you can live out your faith in the workplace in a particular field of study or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. Like that's the point where all this comes together, not just for preachers but for all of us as Christians. Like Tom, you're saying, we all have that call to follow me, and so wherever that following takes you, just say yes. Save yourself the heartache, right? So, all right, Tom, Joseph, thank you for sharing that. Those are our personal stories that mean a lot to us. If you have a call story, and so I thank you guys for sharing that. Thanks for giving us some insight. Thank you for listening. We know you're called. We hope you're responding with a yes. Tom, Joseph, thank you for the gift of a time, and we will see you all next week. God be with you. Well, I had pizza for breakfast. Is that